Thank you for joining us on this inclement afternoon. An example of how 4 seasons in one single day, and the day's not over yet, can be expected in May. My old mother used to say, near Caster Cloot till May is oot. Don't divest of any of your outer garments until the end of May. It's not the end of May, but it is more or less the end of the election campaign. An election campaign like no other, in which for a substantial period of the election campaign, those of us who are not in the SNP government were not allowed by law to campaign. We were forbidden to hold public meetings, still are. We were forbidden to address people in the open air, still are. That's why I'm accompanied by my good friends, Jamie Blackett, the leader of All for Unity, and Charlotte Morley, our lead candidate in the Lothian region, John Stanley, one of our top men in central Scotland, and other colleagues who are standing on our list in both regions. But the public, of course, cannot be here. We were only allowed to knock on doors from the 26th of April, and we were not allowed to deliver leaflets through doors for the first part of the campaign. I know that because we had to pay a very substantial sum of money to the Royal Mail to get them to deliver it for us. The Royal Mail can deliver leaflets, even private delivery companies can deliver leaflets, but parties were not able to. All the while, Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister of Scotland, bestrode the television studios every single day with what was thinly veiled, scarcely disguised nationalist propaganda, accentuating difference wherever she could. But hey, that's her role in life. It has been her role in life throughout her political career, which, as we all know, began at the age of 16. We know that because so many people have known her since she was 16. That's an in-joke, but I hope you are among those who gets it. It is now more or less the end of the campaign. Polling begins in the morning, and so we are gathered here to make a last-minute appeal to people to save our Scotland. We believe that another 5 years, bringing to 20 years of one-party rule in Scotland, would be a profoundly unhealthy outcome. Profoundly unhealthy, whoever the party was, whichever party in a democracy was in power for 20 years would be unhealthy. When that party has as its sole purpose the ripping apart of the country, the erecting of a hard border with England, the sowing of division, not just actually against English people, that's very bad. But even worse is the sowing of hatred against those of us who don't want to see the partition of our beautiful island. Those of us who don't want to see the country broken up are treated as the enemy within. And don't think I'm exaggerating, because last night, again, I had two police officers in my private home for the second night in succession, for hours, taking statements about yet more threats to murder me. It's quite funny, if it weren't so dangerous. The SNP and its House organ, the National, said at the beginning they were just going to ignore me. Now, at the end of the campaign, their supporters are just trying to murder me. And this Ulsterisation of Scottish politics will only gather significant pace if the SNP are re-elected tomorrow, particularly if they are re-elected but depending on the support of extremist forces who feel that the SNP hasn't sown quite enough hatred, quite enough division, and want to accelerate that process. Do not wish for that. Do not facilitate that. Don't give them the opportunity tomorrow to take Scotland further down this dark and dangerous road. It's a low road. It brings out the worst in us. It brings out the worst in nationalist fervour, which could spin out of control and could become very dangerous indeed. And the fact that police officers are having to guard this event here today is further example of that. Now, behind me is the Scottish Parliament. At the Labour conference in Aberdeen in 1974, I gave my first speech to a Labour Party conference, and it was a call for Labour to support the demand for devolution, for a home rule parliament like this one behind me in Edinburgh. I was a true believer. The Labour Party was very divided then on whether or not this was a good idea. Some of my closest friends, like the late Robin Cook, like the late Tam Dalyell, were strongly opposed to it, arguing that this can only accelerate the separatist cause in Scotland. And as Tam put it memorably, as he did on so many things, it will be a motorway without an exit ramp. I didn't agree with them now. I don't even entirely agree with them. I didn't agree with them then. I don't even entirely agree with them now. But it's a much closer call for me now than it was then. It's quite obvious that the government of Tony Blair and Gordon Brown did not properly design this Scottish Parliament experiment. They did not design the constitutional arrangements in a way that would stop a devolved assembly being used as a battering ram to break down the door to separatism. They did not take the precautions. They did not do the due diligence that they should have done and made the constitutional changes that would have made it impossible for that to happen. I think most people watching this already know what's happened. Instead of devolution and this building behind me being used to govern Scotland better within the Union, this Parliament has been captured by separatists whose sole purpose is to use this building behind me to end Britain as we know it. Now, at least half of Scotland, on the latest poll, 55 to 45, quite familiar numbers those, will never agree, never accept being dragged out of Britain against their will. That's particularly true here in Edinburgh, but it's also particularly true in South Scotland, where I am standing and where I live. I'm told that Orkney and Shetland would not wear it either. I'm told that Aberdeenshire would not wear it. And wouldn't it be the most extraordinary and dismal irony if the breakup of Britain set in motion events that could lead to the breakup of Scotland itself? That would be a miserable, dreadful end to the whole separatist surge. But it could happen. And the best way to avoid it from happening is to ensure that we go no further down that dangerous road by re-electing Sturgeon tomorrow. I think people are tired of her. I think people are fed up of the SNP government. It has been a miserable failure on virtually every single metric on schools, on health, on policing, on the law, on transportation. We still waiting for a solution to the chronic transport problems along the borders and in the south of Scotland. People are fed up of failure, fed up of SNP failure. And when you add to that the ever-present fear for investors, fear for people with businesses, small, medium, and large. Look at the Royal Bank of Scotland just last week. Who's going to invest in a country where you don't know if in the next 24 months that country is going to be plunged into real instability and potential breakup? Who's going to keep their resources here when they don't know what currency those resources will be in if that separatist nightmare took place? Who's going to buy property that could be instantly devalued by the danger of separatism? This instability is really bad for Scotland. It's really bad for the Scottish economy. Now, this whole separatist nightmare would have been a bad idea any time in our history. Our best 3 centuries ever have been the 3 centuries in which we've been in union with the rest of the United Kingdom. But to do it when we're still in a pandemic and haven't even begun to count the economic cost of that pandemic is literally insanity. It is an insane idea. And yet, according to the opinion propaganda, as I call it, it might well happen tomorrow if you stay at home and don't go out to vote. The weather might not be great tomorrow, but if you want to save Scotland, if you want to save Britain, then you have to go out tomorrow, rain, hail, or shine, and vote smartly. These are my last words on this. By smartly, I mean this. You have to vote for the best placed candidate to defeat the SNP tomorrow, even if you don't like them, even if you don't like their party, even if you've never voted for them before, even if your grandmother would turn in her grave at what you're doing. You have to do it. Because in constituency after constituency, dozens of them, the SNP may be elected on a minority vote. And those who don't want separatism will be in the majority, but they will have split their vote, in some cases for literally hopeless third and fourth place candidates. In Edinburgh Central, for example, Agnes Robertson, the next leader of the SNP, cannot win unless the anti-SNP voters split their votes across no-hope candidates, fighting for third place rather than fourth place. Don't be silly. Vote for the Conservative in Edinburgh Central to make sure the SNP don't capture the seat. Ditto in Glasgow South Side. Who in their right mind would vote for the Conservatives or the Liberals rather than for Anna Sarwar, the Labour candidate, when the prize is the defeat of Nicola Sturgeon herself? This is not rocket science. Vote smart. On the lilac or purple ballot paper, vote for the person best able to defeat the SNP. But on the orange, peach-coloured ballot paper, if you want to super glue the union, if you want to lock down the union, if you want to finish this never-ending you need to give your vote to us. That's a matter of mathematics. Don't listen to the siren voices trying to lure you onto the rocks. 2 votes for us, please. That is psephological, electoral, mathematical nonsense. It doesn't work. It didn't work last time, didn't work the time before that, didn't work the time before that, and will not work this time. Vote smart on purple and vote all for unity on the orange ballot paper, and you will maximize the British Union support in the outcome of this election. Now, the next speaker is the leader of All for Unity. He's a farmer in the southwest of Scotland. He's a former army officer who saw action and danger all over the world. He's a thinker. He's a writer of the first rank. He's even a columnist in some of the country's most dubious newspapers and magazines. Of course, he's Jamie Blackett. Please stay tuned for our leader, Jamie Blackett. Jamie.
Thank you, George. Thank you, George. Well, here we are, the last day now, the last opportunity for 5 years to change Scotland, and where else but outside Holyrood. The wee pretendy parliament, as Billy Connolly once famously called it, the shortbread Senate. I don't like it when people denigrate our parliaments, because it shames us as a nation when they do. But they only do that because there is some truth in the fact that it doesn't work. It doesn't work for the people of Scotland because it's led to the centralisation of power under one small cronyist clique of people who believe in the breakup of Britain, and cynically, maybe they only really believe in the breakup of Britain as there's something that they can sell to their followers to keep them in power. Certainly, they're unable to make a case for separation. They don't know what currency they would use. They don't know what they would do about the hard border that would be inevitable between Gretna and Berwick, that would destroy farming businesses like mine. And not only is it an architectural disappointment, it also fails as the cockpit of the nation, because the debate there spawns hatred and division in Scottish society. My friend George Galloway has had to put up with threat after threat, some of them orchestrated by senior members of the SNP, saying things on Twitter which have led directly to death threats. When we talk about the Ulsterisation of Scotland, George and I talk with some experience. I was on one side of the barricades and he was on the other, metaphorically. I was there as part of the security forces. He, like around 40, 50% maybe of people in Northern Ireland, didn't want us there. Supports a united Ireland. But that is all over now. The important thing is that he and I have come together because we see that the kind of sectarianism, the kind of division that we saw at first hand in Northern Ireland has now come here to Scotland with death threats against politicians because of the failure of this place to have civilized debate, the failure of this place to accept the settled will of the people after the referendum in 2014. We need to change that. We need to change the way that devolution works for Scotland. We need to give power and resources back down to the people, back to the regional councils who have been starved of money so that the roads are full of potholes. The schools haven't got enough teachers. The hospitals haven't got enough doctors. And all because this place, under Nicola Sturgeon, has put all its efforts into trying to break up Britain. Tomorrow is the last opportunity for 5 years to change that. Bizarrely, we, All for Unity, are now the only party implacably opposed to another referendum. The Tories seem to think in their election literature that a majority for the SNP would lead to another referendum. Why would that be when only probably less than 30% of the people of Scotland are going to bother to turn out tomorrow to vote for separatist parties? I don't understand why that would be, and we will continue to press Boris Johnson to sort this out, to pass a Clarity Act to end the never-endum. So, tomorrow, as George said, let's use this opportunity to change Scotland, to bring about the change we also badly need to heal our broken society. Vote with your first vote on the lilac ballot paper for the party most likely to boot the SNP out of here, and on your second vote, the orange ballot paper for All for Unity. Thank you.
Bravo.